Welcome to today's NACE Connect session, Chevron and Recruiting Excellence Awards. It's my pleasure to turn it over to session facilitator and NACE president, Chris Carlson.
Thanks, Cecilia. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here on this Monday afternoon in the second week of NACE Connect. I am personally very thrilled to have a group of leading edge thinkers in our profession who are going to share a little bit with us about their awards and what kind of allowed these award nominations to rise to the top. So I'm joined today by several colleagues from across the country. And I'm going to start by just asking each one of them to introduce themselves and to tell us a little bit about their program that they're winning the award for. But I'm going to start with announcing the NACE Chevron Award winner, which is the Art and Design Week at the University of Wisconsin Stout. And representing Wisconsin today is Julian. So Liz, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the award-winning program?
Yes, thank you so much for having us today. I'm Julian. I'm a career counselor at UW Stout, which is Wisconsin's Polytechnic University. But we also have the largest school of art and design in the state of Wisconsin and one of the biggest ones in the upper Midwest. And so our students wanted that bigger connection with industry. So we started hosting this event a few years ago, and it's sort of evolved a little bit. But now students, there's a whole week where we really focus on connecting those skills that they need and connecting them with professionals. So they have Monday through Thursday speakers, panels, also talks about professional skills that they need. And then on Friday, we end the day with portfolio reviews where they have the opportunity to sit down with 3 different professionals, get feedback on their materials, and then they can take that forwards and also have that to network with in the future.
Awesome. And how many students roughly have benefited from this program so far?
Sure. In 2019, we had 170 students who participated in portfolio reviews. A variable number of 30 to 50 would attend the speakers each evening. And about 45 professionals helped provide those portfolio reviews.
That's awesome. And were you able to achieve your expected outcomes?
Yeah, students really felt like the biggest takeaways they had was being able to communicate about their portfolio, but also what needed to change to be more prepared to be career ready when they graduated. And then the other piece they took away was that networking piece. Most of them would follow up with the reviewers afterwards, thanking them for their time, and then they could carry that forward. So we definitely achieved our goals there.
Awesome. Any surprises? Anything you weren't expecting?
We anticipated mostly having juniors and seniors, which did shake out, but we did have some freshmen and sophomores and even some juniors who hadn't really made a portfolio before. So we had to kind of know where to refer them to in terms of how to prepare a portfolio. Where do they need to do it? Do they need an online one? I have a design background, so I'm prepared to answer those questions, but if the professionals working with them don't, you need to have a good partnership with your faculty to answer those questions. And then also preparing reviewers to know that they might have some very beginner portfolios and they might have some students who are ready to go out the door and get a job. Some of our reviewers are there as sort of a soft recruiting event. So they might get in contact with a student later. It is primarily a developmental activity though. So we have to make sure to say, you might see a very beginning portfolio here. It might not be somebody that is ready yet for that job.
Great. How long did it take you all to kind of put all this program together and make it successful?
each year or
Yeah.
all of it?
I assume this isn't the first year, so.
Right. So we book our dates out a year in advance, and then we host it in the spring. We start early fall planning what topics we want to cover, updating our invite list for professionals, and then I start doing outreach to those professionals and alumni to get them basically our panels and topics solidified, and then start getting, in early spring, we start basically having registration for the reviewers.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, and congratulations, Liz.
Thank you so much.
We're going to come back to you, so don't go away. Next, I want to announce an honorable mention for the NACE Chevron Award, which is Hire You from Wake Forest University. And representing Wake Forest today is Dana Hutchens. Dana, how are you?
I'm doing well. I appreciate you having me on the call. I am the Senior Associate Director on Employer Relations, have been at Wake for 29 years, and was proud to be a member of a team that sort of developed this program. The Hire You program actually, I guess, sort of got its infancy stage in about 2012 when our career development courses were just really in early stages of being developed. And Heidi Robinson, who was rolling those classes out, came to the employee relations team and said that she would like to, sort of think outside the box. She really thought that students need to hear and needed to see what employers were looking at in resumes and application documents. So back in, I guess, the fall of 2012, early spring of 2013, she and I developed this program that was purely for her course. I would say a class of maybe 20 students. And from that point forward, it has grown into what it is today, where we actually are serving over 400 students each year in this program. It is now rolled out to students that are actually coming into the undergraduate school of business. That is part of their mandatory orientation. As part of the program, I guess when we developed it, we were sort of before this new gaming strategy developed. I guess we didn't know we were gaming back then, but it actually is a gaming strategy that's being used these days in career development. And what we do is we have students from classes, from the orientation program when they're being introduced into the School of Business. We've actually also rolled this out to our Board of Trustees. They've actually gone through this program as well, so they can see what our students are doing. But students are put into groups, and they are actually given a stack of resumes that have been used at Wake Forest in the past, and they haven't been there 29 years. I'm a pack rat, and I have kept resumes. So I was able to edit those documents to keep all names and addresses and things confidential. But we pull those resumes together, and the students are put into groups and are allowed to look at those resumes, and based on a management development job description, are told to look at those resumes and pull the candidates they would consider getting an interview. The interview person that's selected would be a member to join their team. So they're told that, okay, this person will join your team. It's going to affect your bottom line. It's going to affect your group dynamics. You need to really think about who this person is that's being hired in the role that we have. As they begin the review of the application documents, that's when the fun begins on my side, because you do see the students in their groups are looking at the resumes. And I will tell you, the resumes, there's some good ones. There's some bad ones. There are formatting issues. There are typos. Anything you can imagine that you've probably seen on a resume, we've thrown in. And they start reviewing them. And it's fun to listen to them as they are in their small groups, start trying to figure out based on the job description who they think are the viable candidates. Just about the time they're ready to make that decision, we throw in the first monkey wrench, and we say, oh, by the way, a couple of students wrote cover letters. Would you like to see those? So they get a couple cover letters. They start looking at the cover letters, and I'll tell you, one of them is probably one of the best cover letters I've ever seen written, but it's written to the wrong company. So that's the first thing. Do they pick up on it? Are they proofreading? Are they reading it enough to pick up on it? They start their review again, having the resumes, having the cover letters, thinking they're down to about to make their decision when there's another knock on the door and another monkey wrench is thrown in. And we say, oh, by the way, we had an info session on campus, and these are the students that attended the info session. They're not the two that provided the cover letter. So you're getting at least 2 students with cover letters, 3 more that have attended an info session. Now they've got to play out that dynamic to see how that's going to affect their decision making. Again, as they start going through their deliberations, we throw in the last monkey wrench, which is the knock on the door. And oh, by the way, we thought you should know the CEO's nephew we heard might be in your applicant bundle, and just thought you might want to know that for consideration. It's the worst resume of the bunch. But they then have to decide whether that information will sway their decision making. They're able to take that, and it's really interesting. The students, do come to consensus. Some of them get the right answer, some of them do not. We actually had a company that we used their development training program job description who actually told us from our fake resumes who they would have chosen. And it's really interesting when the students see that divulged, that they're like, wait a minute, that kid had a typo on their resume. Why did they choose me? And we're able to talk through the can do, will do mentality and fit. Can they do the job? Will they do the job? Are they the right fit for the company? And that's what it comes down to. And it does make impact on what our students are able to take from it and then to turn that into what they then do to their own recruiting processes.
Awesome. Well, I'm delighted to know that somebody with a typo got through.
They did.
Because I know mine has a typo on it typically as well. So try to fix that. So it sounds like you're also developing a training course for the next generation of university recruiters.
Possibly so. Possibly so.
You need to start selling some of those candidates that do well to companies as possible campus recruiters.
Well, the best rewards are the students. We actually ask the students when they finish the project to give us some statements. What did they learn? And one of the statements, and I just have to read it verbatim because the student really, I thought, hit it the nail on the head. It says, I need to learn how to write a resume that adequately represents and promotes my qualifications. I need to proofread, but I also need to realize I'm not defined by my major or my GPA. And that was just really one of those telltale statements that they were able to, after the process was over, really see, what they could take this from and actually change their own thinking process through the whole recruitment of whatever they were looking for, a job or an internship.
Awesome. So from your perspective, any surprises that you all have encountered? It sounds like you've been doing this program for a while, but any big surprises this last year?
We actually did. We saw, I'm going to give you the exact numbers because we started tracking it more diligently probably within the last 2 years for the students who participated and how that then changed what they did with us. For the students that participated this last year for the 2019 cycle, 2019-20, those that attended, did the Hire You, attended at least one true, what we call signature employer-facing event. A lot of them hadn't done anything prior to that, but when they realized the impact of them face-to-facing an employer, it did change their participation. On average, after that, the participants had 3 career coaching appointments. So they realized that they really needed to talk through their career interests. They needed to get their application documents, up to what they should be to compete with the market. And then on average, they submitted at least 2 more job or internship applications compared to non-Hire You participants. So we actually saw our numbers increase by these populations alone.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. Next, I want to bring on the employer winner for the Recruiting Excellence Award. And this year it went to Liberty Mutual Insurance. And representing them today is Kayla Wheaton. Kayla, welcome. How are you?
Thank you. Doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the award nomination and the program that garnered the Recruiting Excellence Award?
Sure. So the program that we ran was called the Liberty Mutual Women in Technology Summit. And really what it was an immersive 3-day event at our headquarters in Boston. We really had a goal of bringing together freshman and sophomore female college students to really send the message of inspiration, motivation, and empowerment as they pursue technical careers. And really, we saw kind of twofold a need to bring this program into the light. First, technology is a male-dominated industry, and we recognize the need to increase female representation in our own technology organization at the company. So, part of the challenge really was to really attract and increase the female representation in our candidate talent pipeline, and really also saw there was a need to create new approaches to engage that talent earlier in their careers. We wanted to try and move the needle, both from an industry perspective and also, again, really hone in on that theme of really inspiring, empowering, and motivating these students so they would continue to pursue their technical careers. Because we've seen, and according to some of the NACE survey data we've seen in the past, students sometimes drop out, whether it's too challenging. And so we really wanted to try and get ahead of that to show them, no, you have the talent, you're capable, and you can do this, and we support you in that.
That's awesome. So how large of an effort did it take to pull this together, and how many people across Liberty Mutual were ultimately engaged?
That's a really great question. It was a very collaborative effort, both between members of my team, my entire tech campus recruiting team, and I received mentor and guidance from one of my colleagues in particular, so she was a great help for sure. And then also, it took a big effort in partnering with our business partners, particularly in our Women in Technology Employee Resource Group at the company. So there were a lot of folks involved, different moving pieces, because we wanted to make sure that we had the right content that we were delivering to these candidates. Because yes, while we wanted it to definitely be a great event, also keeping in mind, what was that mission? Why were we holding this event? And making sure the content really spoke to our audience.
So are you going to be able to kind of track the achievements longer term, or did any of these individuals track into your internship program?
Yeah, great question. We actually surpassed our goal. We had a goal of hiring 25% of the participants into our current internship program this summer. We actually got a result of 57% conversion, and they started with us last month. So things have been going pretty well, but fantastic to see that achievement across the board for all of our efforts.
Awesome. So how can all of our career services friends who are on this call get their students in front of you for this program?
Oh, I love that. We have so many great school partnerships, and we continue to partner with career services. And I mean, I know I myself, and I'm not going to speak for my entire team, but I think we all really try and encourage students, attend those workshops, really partner with career services. We partner with them, and so we look to you as experts on campus to see what are students learning in the curriculum. This is what we have for a candidate pipeline that we're seeking to meet the needs of our internship and full-time roles. This is what we see as really succeeding and doing well. How can your curriculum fit that? What are some student organizations that we can partner with to host various workshops, virtual engagement pieces? So definitely we look at it as a strong partnership.
Awesome. And are we planning the next years already?
It actually just took place. One of my colleagues, Kim, she just led our 3rd annual Women in Technology Summit. And I'd say, maybe not a surprise, but a really nice thing to see was a lot of the attendees who attended the 3rd annual event, they said, oh, we heard about this through some of our friends who attended the 2nd annual event, which is what I hosted last year. So it's spreading through word of mouth, and there's really just great feedback in BOC across the board. So just took place last week.
Awesome. And was it virtual last week?
It was, and that was the first time ever. So that was definitely a big thing to pivot, but it went off without a hitch. Really great feedback.
Awesome. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
For that Excellence in Recruiting Award. Well done.
Thank you.
Don't go anywhere. We're going to come back.
Won't go anywhere.
All right. Next, we have 2 honorable mentions for the Recruiting Excellence Award. I'm going to start with Fritz Bigham from Uber ATG. Fritz, are you there?
I am, Chris.
All right. How are you doing today?
I am good.
Awesome.
Calling
Why
in
don't you tell us
from
a little bit about
Pittsburgh.
University Day, a look under the hood of Uber?
Perfect. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Like Chris mentioned, I'm Fritz Bigham. I work with Uber, and I am within the university as a talent acquisition manager. So what we did was we called it a University Day, and we tagged it a look under the hood of Uber's Advanced Technologies Group, which is building self-driving technology. So how did we get here? One of the things the team and we were discussing was how do we create an opportunity for a diverse group of students to connect to our company in terms of our mission and culture, but also see our office space. So that kind of set the vision for our University Day. So a couple of things we kind of thought about to accomplish. We wanted to create an event where students from all over the United States could spend a full day, it was approximately a day and a half, in Pittsburgh at our Uber ATG campus. We wanted them to preview our culture, interact and showcase our technology in terms of our self-driving technology, in terms of our hardware labs, our actual vehicles, and then see the software and how it is produced. And then last piece there is also they have the opportunity to interview for a summer internship, which was a great opportunity to be on site for that experience. And then another thing that was rooted was it was providing an opportunity for us as a lean team to connect with diverse students from a variety of institutions outside of our target schools. So we only have 9 to 10 target schools, and we feel like there's, like everyone on this call, we wish we could go to more schools and actually have a physical presence, but we kind of said with this, let's flip it. Let's invite students who we don't go to their campus to come to our campus here in Pittsburgh.
That's awesome. So how many students did you have?
So with this, we had 31 students visit us in fall, so November in 2019.
Awesome. So how challenging was it to kind of pull all that together? I mean, having worked in corporations, sometimes managers are open to engaging and sometimes they're like, leave me alone, I have this project I have to finish. So how did you kind of bring everyone together to accomplish this?
Yeah, it definitely was an undertaking. I mean, my team did an amazing job in terms of partnering, really showcasing the why to our business leaders in terms of why we're doing this, and then kind of showing the examples of how we're going to execute this. Buy-in was, I would say, super important from a top down in terms of leadership. But then once we had senior leadership bought in, from there it was kind of, that's when it becomes fun. The team was able to kind of think about cool ideas and how do we pull in new grads for panels? How do we pull in different individuals for speakers throughout the day to build, what we thought was a great day of programming that led up to the interviews at the end of the day.
Awesome. Did you incorporate any like hands-on type activities as well, or like where the students actually got to touch and feel some of the technology?
Yeah, so one thing, and this was, we had to work with our hardware team to see how this would work in terms of our hardware shop, but we had them do a tour of our hardware shop to see all the things that we are building. So that was, rated as a pretty high, in terms of one of their favorite memories, going through seeing the hardware that we're building. We also did something where we broke them into smaller groups to do before their software engineering interview. We did a 45-minute workshop on kind of cracking the code interview to help prepare them, but also to just put them a little bit more at ease. They got to meet with people who've gone through the process, who are software engineers, to kind of give them tips, and help them kind of prepare, but also think about, what they should be thinking about in that interview in a more relaxed setting before just kind of walking straight into an interview with us here at Uber.
Awesome. Any surprises on your end? Any results that you weren't quite expecting?
One thing that was interesting, there's 2 things. One, so we sent a follow-up survey in terms we asked them what were their favorite parts of the day. One I think we all were hoping would be at the top was meeting ATG employees. That was, one of the reasons for the event. The other one was bonding with other attendees, which I think it's not super surprising, but I think sometimes we forget that them having the opportunity to come to this experience and get to meet individuals from other schools that they've never met before and have, it was only a day and a half, but it left a lasting experience. And like Dana mentioned, I'm going to read a quick quote here that one of the panelists left us. So in addition to learning about Uber's ATG's projects, I really liked bonding with other interviewees. I thought your staff did an amazing job of facilitating an environment free of competition so that we all felt free to share ideas and contact information. That was definitely unique to Uber ATG's University Day experience.
Awesome. So I guess that would kind of speak to the corporate culture as well. Was corporate culture kind of one of the primary considerations as you built the program?
It was. So in terms of inviting students to our office, we wanted to kind of show them, and we titled it "A Look Under the Hood,"
Right.
so they could kind of see what it's like to work there. And and even in our programming and planning, we wanted to make it authentic. So the last thing we wanted to do was create something that didn't feel like what it's worth to work at Uber ATG on a daily basis. So that was important as well.
Yeah, I think one of the things we continuously hear is how critical it is to be transparent and authentic to students as they come to visit our offices and engage with us. So thanks so much, Fritz. Don't go anywhere. We're going to come back down again. But right now, I'm excited to introduce Johnson & Johnson's co-op and intern onboarding process, which is also an honorable mention for our Recruiting Excellence Award. And with us today is Marcella. I said it right when you first joined. I get nervous. I'm always afraid I'm going to mispronounce something, and then I do. Pounds from Johnson & Johnson. So do you want to share a little bit about the program? I know there's a lot of names listed here as being participants. So can you share a little bit about the program and the teamwork that was involved?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Chris. So hi, everyone. Again, my name is Marcella Pounds. I am the HR lead for University Relations and Events based out of our Tampa office, which is currently my home right now, as for many of you as well. So really excited to be here to get into our intern and co-op onboarding process. So we really had designed sort of this two-step process, if you will. And we made it digital prior to COVID, actually. So we have what we call the backpack to briefcase. And so this session in particular is dedicated to undergraduates that will be joining us for their internship and co-ops. And it is really for them to get the opportunity to answer any of their questions that they may have prior to starting, get the nerves, get the jitters out. Then also expose them to our culture. One of the things that we really tried to undertake with this was just the idea of the overall J&J culture, because we do have 1,500 plus interns and co-ops working with us all across our businesses. And so what can happen, and what maybe even some of them in the past have experienced, is that they would start and they would really dive deep into their role, their team, and that's what their experience was mostly about. And so we wanted to kind of pull back a little bit on that and give that high-level J&J overview, making sure that they understand what the overall culture that they're stepping into is. And so that's where we have the backpack to briefcase. And then as a follow-up to that, we have our North America Intern and Co-op Guidebook that they are able to access and download. And this provides them with more information on the company. It gives them information about our employee resource groups. We even have different checklists and things like that in there. So a pre-onboarding checklist so they can make sure they've gotten everything done. We've got the contact information of their recruiters, all of that good stuff in there for them so that they can prepare to have a strong start.
That sounds awesome. I read a little bit about it ahead of time, and it sounds like you kind of brought the work to life in a sense, because they actually had hands-on almost projects or things they had to think through as part of the experience. Was that something you guys intentionally did, and how did you go about kind of developing that type of approach?
Yeah, so a lot of our development for the approach in the program had to do with our campus ambassadors. So we have some deep relationships with campus ambassadors across a number of our core schools. And so we really look to them as to hear sort of that voice of the intern and the co-ops that come through. And so hearing from them that, you know, they felt like they didn't get as much of that overall J&J experience in terms of the culture piece, that is what led us to really design it in the way that it is. And so providing them with the ability to hear from folks who have been in their shoes. So we actually had the campus ambassadors on and had them present different areas. And then that also gave the campus ambassadors the opportunity to speak to. So we created content, right? They were able to give their own experiences that related to the content. So that, I think, made it even more impactful for the students. And of course, we were there as talent acquisition. However, we did not have any managers, we did not have any recruiters on, because we didn't want it to create, we didn't want it to be like a nervous atmosphere for them, right? We wanted them to be very comfortable and feel like this is a safe space that, you know, we can have some conversations about what you might be feeling going, you know, let's say this is your first time going into an intern or co-op for a huge company like J&J. That could be a little nerve-wracking. And so we wanted to really be able to help them through that.
That's awesome. Any surprises from your side that you experienced along the way?
I think the biggest surprise probably has come with COVID, probably like everybody else. Even though this is a digital program, we realized that there needed to be a little bit of a different approach with everything happening with COVID. And so what we did was we started having it more often. So before we would have it, you know, in the spring and then in the fall. But now, you know, we have it every 2 weeks, just because things happen so often. And we really want to make sure, you know, that if we need to tweak content or anything like that, we have the opportunity to do that.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like an excellent program to bring people on board. I know that sometimes bringing people on board is something very challenging because you want to set them up right, but you only have them for a short period of time, and you want to make sure that they stay interested and engaged throughout the entire process. And it sounds through a lot of this interactive engagement, you've definitely kept them engaged throughout that program and had them ready to go on day one.
Yeah, we've gotten a lot of great feedback. So we do a survey after each one, and literally, and maybe this is another big surprise, is that, you know, the feedback has been all positive. You know, we have yet to hear that they didn't feel as prepared, you know, so everyone has always been able to take something away from it, which I think is also the goal, right? Is for them to, you know, walk away feeling like, hey, I can do this and I'm ready.
Yeah. I think what's interesting to me is, and maybe you took a little bit of this approach, but you took their perspective into account when developing it. So you almost put yourself in the shoes of a new hire based on the feedback from the campus ambassadors. So you kind of had a sense of what to provide them, and what too often I think companies just give you a checklist based on what they need from you versus what the new hire needs, more so than what I need to fill out my I-9 and my W-4 or whatever it is. Yeah. All right. Well, if somebody were to replicate your program, not stealing it outright, hopefully, because we don't want to do that, but what would they need to know up front? What sort of things would they really need to think about?
Is that for me first?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to start with you first. I'm going to go backwards and ask the same question of everyone, but I'm starting with you.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. I think one of the main things they need to know is exactly actually what you just said, which is, you know, think about the voice of your audience and where, you know, where do you need to meet them? I feel like that's one of the key pieces, and I think that's also probably the reason why we've seen the success that we've seen with the program, is that we have taken the time to do that. So I definitely would encourage, you know, if you're thinking about doing something like that, survey your current interns and or co-ops and see where they're at. See, you know, what was their perspective of their onboarding process, and if there are any gaps within that, that's where I would start with that.
Awesome. Well, thank you. So Fritz, same kind of question. If somebody wants to replicate the Uber ATG program, what advice would you give them, and what do they kind of need to think about up front?
Yeah, one piece of advice I would give is it's definitely like a team, all hands on deck in terms of being able to pull off an event like this. In terms of, you know, whether it's 1 day, 2 days, a half day, when you have different segments and different workshops, it's a heavy lifting in the beginning. I think the team now is excited to have been able to execute this and to now have a playbook, and they understand that they created of how this works. But when we first started, we didn't have that. And, you know, when you don't have that and you're saying, can we pull this off? Can we do this? You know, you have to build that confidence and build that muscle to be able to do these things first. So I would, in terms of another thing, just I would say keep it simple in terms of as you're trying to replicate it, and really like have it focused on what you're hoping to accomplish, and kind of mirroring what you're hoping to accomplish with kind of the first iteration of trying to keep it as simple as possible to be able to execute a good program the first time.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. And I assume one of the most important concepts is the food that you have to serve during those 2 days.
Yeah,
Is
that's
that
also a pretty big line item in the cost. If we do think about this again in terms of virtual, you know, we can be creative in terms of what we might do there.
Yeah. Have you thought about that?
We had to onboard our last group of interns today, and I know over the next week we're going to start thinking a little bit more about the fall as we've gotten our last class joined as of this morning.
Virtual pizza for everybody. All right, well, great program. Thank you both. Excellent work all the way around. I'm gonna now go back to Kayla and ask you the same question. If somebody wants to kind of replicate the Women in Technology Summit, what advice would you give them, and what do they kind of need to think about up front as they start to plan something like this?
Yeah, I definitely want to echo what the former speakers have said. For sure, I agree and have taken that into heart when I was planning the event. I think when you're planning such a large scale event such as this, definitely important to be organized. There are a lot of moving pieces. Utilizing some sort of project plan, trying to keep you on track of various milestones. That is one huge piece of advice I highly recommend for sure. And then also building on top of that, when you're just starting from the get-go, really outline what are your goals? What is the purpose and mission of this event? And how will you make that valuable both for your company and for the audience that you're hosting it for? Because you want to make sure that it's beneficial content. You don't just want to have fluff. You want to make sure you're actually involving various sessions, workshops that will be beneficial, you know, to your audience. So that way they have some key nuggets to take away and will find that, okay, this event was actually really valuable for me. And then finally, I think other things to think through. Ultimately, this is a very inclusive event. Whenever you're hosting an event that is inclusive, you're trying to highlight an inclusive culture, whether it's at your employment organization, you know, or your staff, whatever it may be, definitely do some research and really educate yourself on, okay, what are the right things to say? How do I come across with positive intent? So that way you don't steer yourselves in the wrong direction.
Awesome. So I kind of want to bring all three of our employers back on if I can. You know, we talked a little bit, and this is for all three of you to kind of think through. We talked a little bit about really making sure that we're authentic to the students and they really respond to that. What sort of challenges did the three of you really face when kind of really thinking about how to be transparent? I always, you know, tell students, I'm going to tell you the good, the bad, the ugly, to kind of really help them understand why this is the right choice for them and they won't be surprised about things. So how did you guys kind of frame kind of really ensuring that you're being transparent in integrating the students into your culture and ultimately on board to your company? Was that a key consideration? Any one of the three can answer.
Yeah, so I think that's always a key consideration. And I think, with transparency, you always kind of walk that fine line between, how much can I share, and what needs to sort of be held closely. But for us, in the context of, our onboarding process, I think it was sort of easy because, we know that they are hires who have accepted their offers. We know that they are, clear to start and all of that good stuff. So I think that bumps them, they're in a different sort of bucket than, sort of the funnel of applicants that we would have, right? And so with that in mind, I think it made it a little bit easier to be transparent with certain things because we know that they're coming into the organization. And then the other thing is thinking through, what do they absolutely need to know versus what can they know after they start? There's a balance of that as well. And so, again, with this particular program, I think, we kind of have to hold close to your focus, which for us was, we want to introduce them to our culture and we want them to be excited and comfortable with starting and confident. So I think as long as you, keep the focus in mind of what it is that you want to achieve, then it's kind of easy to think about the level of transparency.
Awesome. Fritz, Kayla,
Yeah,
anything?
I'll just add, that's a great point about the transparency of that level of what you're trying to accomplish. So I think one thing we were thinking throughout was we're bringing them here to us. And we have the opportunity to meet them as university recruiting professionals on campus. But when they come to our office, they really want to get to know the FTE employees. So we kind of took a step back from what we usually do within university recruiting. We usually are leading the presentations and introducing some individuals. We really allowed our employees to showcase who they are. And we kind of asked ourselves several times, like, can we pull in someone else to do this presentation? Can we find someone that, was just in their shoes to give them a tour that we would usually do from the recruiting perspective? So that when we were thinking about transparency and thinking of just showcasing, we tried to, funny enough, to remove ourselves as much as possible and bring in others that are in the Pittsburgh office to showcase that for us.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would just echo similar things as well. When really building out the content for the event that took place over time, we wanted to make sure we had a variety of activities. So we really were able to showcase, this is what goes on in the day of a life, maybe in this particular person in the tech org. So definitely partnered with folks in the technology organization to host various interactive discussions. And we even addressed the topic of the gender gap in the industry to take it, spearhead it straight on and really talk about, okay, what are some ways to overcome that? How can you increase your confidence and really be supportive of one another? And also, really looked at, how are you thinking of your own personal and professional development, and really making sure that you put you first and you really think about you, what inspires you, what empowers you to go along that event theme. But definitely agree, it definitely takes a big team to execute everything. So leveraging different subject matter experts to host those particular discussions were definitely key. And I think the last thing was that I thought was really cool is we try to involve past participants who attended the Women in Technology Summit, who may be currently interning with us, to just firsthand share their account. What did they enjoy about the event? What brought them back to our company?
Awesome. Well, thank you all very much from the Recruiting Excellence Award recipients and honorable mentions. I'm now going to go to Dana, who was with Wake Forest, and ask the same question. Dana, if somebody wants to replicate your program, i.e. me, in recruiting university recruiters, what do I kind of need to know up front, and how do I get the library of old resumes from you?
Just ask. The best kind of flattery is when someone wants to try to mimic some of the things you've done. I will tell you, I think the best thing to do is to pilot, and don't be afraid to pilot an event. And that's what we did. We started small with a class, and we were able to be nimble and move things around when we did that. Also, has been key in the way we've been able to scale it is we brought in other folks outside of our employee relations team and our career coaching teams. We use our career coaches across the school, across the programs from the undergraduate to the MBA level. We actually have brought in graduate career counseling students who need to get hours to help us facilitate. And when we first started off, we didn't have facilitators. We allowed the students to get in groups and form themselves, but we realized we needed to have diversity of thought amongst the student participants. So now when we do our programs, we actually do form the student groups ourselves. We know the students that are going to participate, and we put them in groups so that there's different class years, there's different majors, there's different experiences, to make sure that they can all have a voice when they're doing this deliberation. And the facilitators help if they get stuck. They can help prod them along, but they also can help moderate if there's an alpha in the group who wants to try to take over and try to influence what the group decision is. The facilitator can help kind of bring that back down to make sure everyone has a voice. So we've been able to do that. It's easily done, but I would say definitely start small and then scale it up.
Awesome. Thanks, Dana. And Liz, same question. If somebody wants to replicate your program, which is Dana's program was obviously geared towards more kind of some business students and a cross section. Yours is very focused on the arts environment. So what advice would you give someone in career services who's looking to kind of replicate some of the great work you've done in that space?
Sure. Well, three things. First, kind of to echo Fritz and everyone in recruiting, it's a team effort, especially for that portfolio review event. It takes a lot of people. We have a lot of people coming and going. It's really a team effort, having a good team, having roles for everyone so they know what they're doing. Very helpful. And that's even beyond the alumni and professionals who help. Secondly, those alumni and professionals, if you don't have a good network to tap into, start early. And our faculty have been great. Like 90% of these are alumni that they're connected with. And so that's been easy. But if you're starting from scratch, maybe you don't have that good alumni network, it might be a little bit more challenging. But our alumni, when I have one more person on a panel that I really need, I can ask the alumni, hey, do you know someone? I know you can't make it, but we're looking for someone who has this niche experience. Do you know it? And they connect me with stuff all the time. So that's huge. And then the third thing, particularly again for that portfolio review day, be prepared for no-shows, illnesses. It's going to happen when you have 170 students. It's inevitable, and 45 professionals. So build in breaks for the professionals and have someone, their job is solely to plug in students if their professional can't make it. Last minute something comes up, you have somewhere to put them. So they still get that experience, they still get a review. And something we started doing this year after 2019 is students, when they register, they had to agree to our no-show policy that we use for interviews. So we're treating it like a campus interview where if they don't show up, they need to apologize, come to career services and write an email to those reviewers. So we're keeping that relationship good.
That's awesome. Thank you all very much. I'm going to open it up to our audience to see if there might be any questions for these amazing leading edge thinkers in our field. If anyone has any questions for them.
And Chris, this is Dana with one more thing. I do want to clarify that our program is actually across the campus, not just the School of Business.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, but what happened was we started off with the smaller courses, which were within the college, with the undergraduate liberal arts programs. And then because it was so successful, it got scaled tremendously for the undergraduate School of Business students. So that's where our numbers really jumped, was when 250 students started taking the higher U rather than just 20 in a class.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for clarifying that. That's awesome to see it kind of really ripple across the entire campus like that. All right, checking to see if there's anything on the chat. Not seeing anything. All right. Any of you have any last minute thoughts, comments, questions?
I'll throw out one thing. I think everyone probably on this call is kind of trying to understand what fall is going to look like. And we're probably starting to have some clarity and probably aligning a little bit more over each coming day. But I think the one thing that when you read some of these programs and some of the best practices, there's always this question that comes up. And I remember in the past thinking about what's the cost? Like if I'm a small employer or if I'm, my budget's been cut in half and I'm a large employer, like what am I still going to be able to do? I do think there is a unique opportunity in this fall to, pilot or test into some of these things. And even like what we talked about on this call. And I think if you organize it and think through it, your cost is going to be pretty minimal in terms of how you can do some of these things. So just wanted to kind of put that out there because I think that's one thing where as we're starting to think about our fall, we're starting to think, yes, we can still pull off a lot of these different things. And then when we look at the cost, which is usually not the first thing we're looking at, it's usually a little bit later, we want to think of great ideas and then decide at the end and a little bit farther about the cost, but the cost potentially might not be there. So you have a chance and you have an opportunity to potentially try some things this fall or later on that you might have not been able to do before.
Excellent point, Fritz. I think, what I really got from you all was a few things. One is you really have to know the audience that you're trying to attract. And you don't always need a budget to engage in a dialogue that's meaningful with someone. It can sometimes be a Zoom call for that matter, because a lot of times college students are looking for kind of that authentic personal engagement, if you will. Secondly, kind of what I really took from a lot of you was there has to be a lot of interaction. There has to be that engagement. So everything from kind of reviewing their portfolio to, working in small groups, looking at probably an old copy of my resume, which has multiple mistakes on it, to interaction with some of our ERG groups, to kind of thinking about how our company really can provide opportunities to deal with some of the leading issues of the day from a medical perspective or a health perspective, to really looking at and understanding some of the latest and greatest in technology as it relates to Uber. So those are a lot of things that we can bring to bear virtually, to your point, Fritz, at little to no cost in some cases, if we think creatively about how we bring them to the audience, really understanding what that audience is looking for and making sure we have that personal engagement through the process as well. So I think there's a lot of great lessons learned from all of you. I personally just want to say on behalf of the 13,000 plus members of NACE representing over 2,500 corporations, thank you all for doing the great work that you're doing, for sharing your great ideas. Congratulations on your award, your honorable mentions. They're all very well deserved. And I just want to thank you for being leading practitioners in our field. So thank you all very much. And thanks everyone for joining us. And again, a great panel with some of our amazing award winners here. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to our speakers for a very informative session, and thank you all for attending. This officially concludes the webinar, and you may now sign off.